Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It is Monday, September 30th, and I thank you for joining me tonight. I know that I might say this every week, but I know everybody's schedule is really busy, and I do appreciate that you take time out of your week to either watch this live or on replay. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I've been making cards for a little over 30 years, and my goal is to simply spread joy one card at a time, and that could be showing you how to make a card. It could be sending a card. It could even be receiving a card myself. I like to have that happen as well. I hope everybody's had a good couple weeks. I apologize for not being here last week. It was just kind of a strange, very hectic, very busy day for me at work, and I didn't get home until late, and it just, I knew I couldn't go live and give a good example of what I wanted to work on, and so I opted to give myself some grace and not go live last week. So this week I'm excited to share with you another decorative mask. This is an online exclusive, and it's the Frosted Forest suite of products. Includes a decorative mask, and what's neat about this is it actually does 3 different types of trees. A larger pine tree, a smaller pine tree, and then just your typical kind of regular old tree. And since we're entering our fall season, I am going to use that set tonight to bring a little fall to our card making tonight. So again, I hope everybody had a great week. This weekend I participated in, I think if I have calculated correctly, it's about my 8th marathon that I do as a community fundraiser for the local food shelf. This year, my mom joined me, my husband joined me, and then we had both grandkids with us as well. And we all survived. We all made it through. And I always like to kind of lead up with that, but then let people know that it's also the world's shortest marathon, which means we literally run a block. You can walk it if you want. It's all in good fun. They have a water stop halfway through. They do start with some little White Castle sliders for us, and the water stop halfway the block, and then at the end of the block they do have donut holes and coffee for people if you need that energy. It really is just meant to be a fun little event, but it is exciting. It does raise money, like I said, for the food shelf, and Cece's run it with me every year now, so I'm hoping that that's something that we can keep up for as long as I'm able to do that marathon. So anyhow, just kind of a fun little thing. And then we got to come back and just spend some time with both grandkids. So that was always nice. Tonight, I really just want to share with you this card. I have pulled out my glass mat so that we can work on that, because I find that to be very helpful with the masks. And I just realized I lost one of my corner pieces, and I think I'm going to have to find it afterwards. My fear is one of the cats might carry it away, but I'm going to have to take that chance with you guys tonight. So let me go ahead and flip my phone over and get it hooked up and get my camera cord out of the way. And I'm kind of guessing where I need to have things set up with my camera since I haven't used my glass mat in a while. So give me a minute to adjust things just a little bit. And it's not that I haven't used it in a while, it's just I haven't used it and filmed live for a while. So again, I just need to make sure where I'm at with everything and kind of get it squared away here just a teeny bit. I think, ooh, that did not help. Let's see if this is going to do it. I think this is one of the hardest parts for me. All right, I'm just going to leave it, and we're going to go with this because that's the best I can do right now, and sometimes that's all we need to do. So let me improve lighting here just a teeny bit, and I'm going to just show you a little bit with this suite. This is the stamp set. It's the Frosted Forest. It's got these 2 pine trees, and it's got this tree with a couple, thinking of you and how you strengthen my life. Birthday wishes for a day as great as you are. Thank you. And no beauty shines brighter than that of a good heart. Little bird flying through. Again, you can do this, although it says frosted, I really think you can do this for any season of the year just based on the colors that you choose. I will admit I tried to get fancy with the masks, and I will share what I learned when I tried to get fancy with the masks, just so that you can kind of learn from my mistake. I am going to play with it a little bit more because I do want to make what was going on in my head work. It just didn't come to fruition with what I was working on today, and you know, sometimes that is okay. So one of the things that I am going to do, because I'm going to be stamping off, oh, it looks like I've got a cat visitor. I don't know if she's going to show up on the camera or not. I'm just going to actually tape a regular piece of, no, I'm not. I'm just going to tape my paper right down. Now I am actually going to be making 2 different cards tonight using this suite, and I will show you the cards. There'll be a little bit of a variation. This is the first card that I made with just a single tree. I like how it looks, but I thought it needed a little bit more, so I had these little sequins retired, same with that brown ribbon, but I thought it just added a little more pop. I did use the Gently Falling 3D embossing folder to get the leaves a little bit in the background on this, and it's just on crumb cake. Okay, that's cute, but it's a little plain. So I stepped it up a little bit and did 2 trees and off-centered one of those trees and played a little bit with the stamp to get the tree marks and things like that on there. Used the decal edge rectangles to create my stamped image. And these are the cards that I am going to make for you tonight, because I think it's important to kind of see how this all comes together. So first of all, I do try to line up my paper, and I always keep my washi tape when it retires because it can become very useful for this kind of thing. I do like to tape down my card when I'm doing this type of stamping, because I want to make sure that it's going to stick. Now, when I made this one, I did not stamp anything on here. This is straight, and this is using Early Espresso. I like it, but I thought it might be just a teeny bit too dark. So with this card, I am going to actually stamp my image first with this. We're going to see how this works out. It may be a total flop, but we're going to find out. So I'm taking my Stampin' Up markers, and I am coloring the tree trunk. And this is something I did on those other cards, and there's a few wooden branches that I want to make sure I get as well, and kind of keep coloring that trunk in as we climb up the tree. Unfortunately, as you're doing this, the branches kind of just magically appear too. And you know what, if you get a little bit where it should be a leaf, we're not going to worry about that. And I think you'll see why that won't be quite as important. And then I also grabbed my Mossy Meadow Stampin' Up markers. And the reason I went with this is I just want to add a little bit of color, but not a lot, to the stamped image. This is really going to kind of be a frame. And I'm changing up the colors that I'm using to be more of the purpley Blackberry Bliss type tones. So I thought that this might be a nice, just little hint of green. And so I'm going through and I'm coloring as much as I can see. That's going to be kind of the leaf outing. Again, if I miss something, I'm not concerned, because this is really just going to be kind of an accent color that truthfully might not even show up when we're all done. I don't know for sure. So just coloring it in. And I always, if I'm going to be coloring on my photopolymer stamps, I do always work with these markers as opposed to the blends, because they will not stain the black. So what I'm going to do now is off camera, because you don't need to see this, I'm going to huff on this ink pad or this block. And what that does is kind of add a little bit of moisture into the ink that may have dried. All right, now you've heard that. Probably don't need any more of that. And I'm just going to center this and stamp it right onto my piece of cardstock. This white cardstock measures 3, I have it written down here so I don't forget, 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. And we'll kind of let that dry just for a minute. And then I'm going to come in with my decorative masks for these 3 pieces. Now these masks are all numbered 1, 2, 3, so I kind of know what order they go in. What you do want to double check, if you're doing it the way I'm doing it right now, is you want to make sure that you have the mask going the right way. You can actually put them down either way. And on one of my cards, I had it going this way, and on one of the cards, I had it going this way. But because I am trying to line up with the tree trunk that I stamped, and then also have my outline lining up, it is important that I have this on here correctly. So I'm going to just, again, take some of this washi tape that's retired. I personally like to put it down on all 4 sides, just makes me feel a little bit better. And then with the glass mat, I'm just taking a Sharpie and drawing right onto the glass into that indentation. This will allow me to line up the subsequent masks on top of each other without running into any issues. All right, I am going to take, and like I said, I wasn't so fond with how that early espresso looked. So I am now going to this time take and use crumb cake. I use that on this card, and I think it just allows for a little more detail to show through when I use a slightly lighter color. So I am grabbing my piece of scratch paper, and I could do this right on my glass. I'm choosing not to in terms of wiping off my ink, because I don't want to take a chance that I set my card onto that finished thing, but it would be perfectly fine for me to do that. It'll come right off. Again, it's more to make sure I don't set my stuff in. So when I'm doing these masks, I've got it lined up over the tree that I've stamped, and I'm just going to come in a circular motion. I start off the openings in the mask, and I like to go in a nice soft touch with kind of that circular motion. For me, that gives a more even coverage. You may find that a different coverage amount style works better for you. So I'm going to lift this mask off and grab my tape. And again, I'm giving it just a second or two to dry before I put the next mask on. But you can see how nicely that lined up. And I didn't have to work very hard to get that to happen. Now we're going to take the mask that begins with the number 2. And I am going to first get it approximately lined up with my dent, but then do the fine tuning. Again, you can see that where the twigs and stuff came out, it needs to be covered up. So this is a great starting point, but always make sure that everything else is lined up as well. And we'll hold this down. I usually end up wearing a piece or 2 of washi tape on my arms, especially when I set it off to the side here like that. And now I'm going to come back in and grab one of my red stained ones here. And I am actually going to start, before I do this, I am going to start with Moody Mauve. I'm choosing to use this color just to add a little accent in here. It looks like I got a big piece of cat hair on this card too. So let me grab a scrap of paper And I'm going to try to just remove that. Otherwise, it could affect how it inks up. Okay, one is gone. You know, when you own cats, you really do get hair into everything. I'm usually pretty careful with my ink pads. Obviously, this time I was not careful enough. All right, I think I got that out. So again, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to rub most of this off. And I'm going to go over this whole thing. I want this light color in here. And then I'm going to come back with my Blackberry Bliss. Yep, I'm just thinking of how I'm layering my colors. But I'm not going to go over it all like I did just now here. This is kind of my red brush, so I'm going to make sure I wipe as much of that off as I can. And I'm going to come back with my Blackberry Bliss ink pad. And again, put some on here, go in a circle. This is a very dark color. I really want it more as a highlight. So I'm going to wipe most of it off on my paper, and then starting off to the edge, I'm just going to come in and add in bits and in pieces. So the whole thing isn't going to be covered with this, but the color will be there. I hope that makes sense. All right, so that layer is done. Isn't that pretty? Wasn't sure. I haven't used these colors together. And actually, to figure out what colors I was going to use on this, I'm going to show you what I did in our annual catalog. Back towards the back on, I should have had this marked, sorry. There's a color wheel. It's on page 132. And so I just looked for colors that were next to each other because that tells me that they're in the same group and they would work. And so that's how I picked these three colors. I'm now going to come back with my third mat. And this isn't going to show up in all of the places, but there is going to be some white, so there'll be just a hint of this color. I'm not as worried about getting this lined up perfectly on the shapes, and in fact it won't happen because it is meant to add splotches or splashes of color, and I do want some of that white area to show. And so I am making sure that that is lined up, but that's all I'm really looking at to line it up, is that indentation there. And again, we're going to cover it up, and I am going to grab a new brush because I don't want to get that dark color on my Berry Bliss here. And again, I'll get some ink on there. I'm going to go off to the side because these reds are all pretty dark. And then I'm just going to come over, and again in that circular motion, I'm going to hit all of the open spots on this layer. And gently peel that off. And so now we've got a nice kind of crimson maple-y type color tree. So that's all I really did for that single one. I do see the hints of green. Let me hold that up so that you can pick it up on the camera, because I'm not, this is why I don't leave my ink pads open. Look what I just did. And sure as heck, if I don't wipe that off, it is going to get that edge right onto my next project. All right. get ink pads out of the way. And I'm glad I did that with the green. It doesn't pop out, but it adds just a little bit of detail into the card. So hopefully you can kind of see those darker splotches. All right, so that's the card front for one of the cards. And then how I did this other card is, again, I'm going to get rid of this indentation. Just a little bit of water will take it off. I'll get rid of where I did the brown, and sometimes I'll run it over the whole surface in case I've got adhesive or anything like that. And the reason I don't use, oh, look what I did. The reason I don't use the same indentation is I'm not going to guarantee that I have this paper lined up in the exact same spot. So it just takes away having to deal with that. So again, I'm going to line my paper up here. This one is going to make my workstation a little bit dirty because there will be some stamping off, as well as some I don't need 4 pieces on here. Some just going off the edge a little bit. So my glass may get a little bit dirty. Again, not a big deal because it'll clean up. So we're going to repeat this step again because I do like the detail that added. And I'm just going to be coloring in branches. And you can see too why I said I'm not very concerned if I hit leaves. This does not have to be a perfect coloring thing because we're really using it to add texture and a bit of depth to the card. And so this process does not need to be perfect. All right, and then we'll come back with our Mossy Meadow and start coloring leaves. You do want to be careful when you're doing this because I'm using that fat tip, and one, I don't want to split it, but it can also splatter to anything that you might have going on around you. And so you do want to, be aware of that so that you're not getting ink onto whatever project you're working on at that time just from the splatters. All right, and once again, we'll get a few of these inside ones. I'm going to just go off camera and huff on that. And so my first tree, I'm going to have to change where my tape goes. Kind of right up to the top and off the edge a little. And then I need to come back and color again. This, you can tell I didn't go quite as dark as I did the first time. And that, again, is okay. Each card that we make here is going to look a little bit different, both in terms of how much ink we have when we're brushing our burgundy, the purpley colored on there, as well as how much ink I have on here and how much huffing I do on the stamp. So we'll come back with some of this green. This is just a really quick way to add layers of color using these masks without going to a lot of work. What I'm doing right now is an extra step. It's certainly not anything you'd be required to do. I am doing it because I like the look. And then we'll put this one kind of right here, and it is going to rub over onto that, and that's okay. So you can see it's just a little bit darker, not a big deal. I am going to now put my tape here so that's held down on that side, and I think I am going to add one more piece there. Now I can start layering my masks on. So once again, we are going to start with this mask, which is for our tree trunks, And I'm going to work right to left. No real reason for that. That's just what I'm doing. You will want to be careful that you're not picking up ink on the back side of this from where you've perhaps stamped off. And so I will wipe that off before I move it to get to this tree. That's just a little word of experience talking. And again, I'm going to grab my Sharpie marker and put right here where I've got my indentation, just to help line things up going forward. This, of course, is going to be for this tree, and then I'm going to have one more mark that will be for that tree. So let's go ahead and get our brown tone. And again, this is crumb cake. And we're just going to go in a circular motion. And we've got that tree trunk done. I will carefully lift this up. And here's where I am going to take just a tissue and make sure I didn't pick anything up. I'm a little concerned that I could have gotten some of that ink on there. In hindsight, I probably should have wiped it before I put this down. But I didn't. And it's okay. Then we're going to add this piece. This will be a slightly more weathered tree trunk, little lighter in color. And I'm going to just put in my indentation for that one as well. And I'll come back, try not to get into my Blackberry Bliss, and leave a mark. Tonight I am a messy stamper. And I'm just coming in, and even though this was much lighter on the stamped image, you can still see the lines on the tree trunk, and that's really all I wanted to capture. So it still worked out just fine. I'm going to set this mask aside. When you are done using them, you can either wipe them with a Kleenex and be done. I do like to run mine under cold water just to rinse them off real quick before I put them away for when I'm done using them. And that's more or less just to keep things from staining. You're going to notice that this red ink is probably going to leave these a little bit stained, and that's okay. So once again, I've lined up the branches and I've lined up this notch, and we're going to come in and we'll adhere a couple sides down. I'm going to grab my big blending brush, make sure I've got most of the color out, come in for my Blackberry Bliss, rub most of that off. Nope, you know what? I started with not Blackberry Bliss, but I started with the mauve colored, Moody Mauve. So let me get most of this off. And I'm not concerned. Yes, this is still going to come off. I'm not concerned about my Moody Mauve picking that up, really. It's going to be such a small amount if it does. And I'm going to get most of my Moody Mauve off and just come in here and in a nice circular motion going over and over. It gets rid of the lines, gives a nice soft touch. There's my Moody Mauve. I will carefully lift this up, again looking to see if I have anything on the back. I do not. If I do, it's probably going to be right in this area. I'm not seeing anything, but I am going to just quickly wipe it off just in case. And then I will repeat the process, lining it up on that piece. And again, using my branches to confirm I have it in the right spot. We'll tack it down with that. And now we're going to come in with that Blackberry Bliss, rubbing most of it off because it is dark. And no, I did it again. Carol, all right, you know what? we got it on here. We're just going to come in here with our Blackberry Bliss. It'll be just fine. Got some areas that are darker than others. I'm going to close this one up. I'm going to get most of that Blackberry Bliss off. Come back here for my Moody Mauve. And just fill in a couple spots. This is what makes this one unique, is each card is going to be different because of how you put your ink on. So even on this card, I've got 2 different colors of purple that are showing through. That is kind of a happy little accident, to quote Bob Ross. All right, we will set that here, and now we're going to come in with this final layer. And again, I'm going to line this one up, primarily focused on that indentation, because I do want these white areas showing. There's that. We're going to close up Moody Mauve in the hopes that maybe I don't grab the wrong thing. Take our Berry Burst. Take off some of the extra, not a lot, but some. And then just circle in from outside and come in and cover these open areas. And it's just going to add another depth of color to that tree. And I'm going to wipe that edge off again. And we'll come over and repeat the lineup right in that indentation. The nice thing with these masks is it's really a pretty forgiving process once you get going. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We'll come back in here with our Berry Burst. It'll be interesting to see how this one shows up, since this was a darker purple to start with, but I think it'll be fine. And I need to be careful because it looks like somewhere I got a little bit of ink on my fingers. Well, at least get that rubbed off, and I'm going to lift this up, and there we go. So you can see all 3 colors still. You can see the lines here. There's a few dark specks of the green leaves. They'll show up a little more, a little bit less. And you're going to go like this. I am going to set these all aside because, again, I do not want to set my project on top of them after we worked this hard to get something this pretty. We'll set that aside real quick, and I'm just going to grab my Kleenex and some water, and we will wipe this off again. And that way we have a clean surface that we can work with. So for assembling these cards, the only other thing that you're going to need is a piece of cardstock and a complementary color. I'm using Berry Burst, and these measure 5 by 3 3/4. And I have used, again, the Gently Falling 3D embossing folder to make my panels that we're going to layer this on. And then the only other thing that you're going to need are scraps of basic white paper. I have pre-cut a couple, again using that deckled edges rectangle. And I am going to just simply, for simplicity's sake tonight, do 2 cards with the same sentiment. Actually only 1 because my other card didn't have it either. Sorry about that. That's in case I goof. Gonna go ahead and stamp and hope I get it pretty straight. And you may be saying, but Carol, you don't have a, oh, that's just a little bit too much. You don't have a foam pad underneath you. And I don't need that when I'm using the glass mat because that's kind of built in. You can still do it if you wish to. I have just found that it, well, except for my stamping tonight, that it does tend to work okay without that. we're going to get this one. And now I have cat hair in here because I can see little lines coming through. Let me grab my stamp cleaner, wherever it is. I've had a couple cats join me lately in my stamping, and I think that is how I'm getting some of this extra fur in my stuff. That's all right. They're worth it most of the time. Okay. Whew. Fourth time was the charm. So we'll set that aside to dry, and I got a little bit of ink from that on the back side. And now we can start to assemble our cards. So with this first card, I'm keeping it pretty simple. I'm layering it onto here. So we'll grab our adhesive. And I also want to let the people that are watching this from North Carolina, I know I've got a couple people that do tune in pretty much every week. You guys are certainly in my thoughts as you are dealing with the events of the last day or two. I cannot imagine what you are going through, and I hope that you are safe. And I'm just going to do my wraparound, so I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive. I know every time I watch the news, it just gets harder and harder to see what's going on and watch the destruction from all that flooding. So you are in my thoughts. All right. So I've just added a little adhesive to the back, and then kind of getting into these faux bows. So I'm just taking a second piece of ribbon and tying it in a knot around that first piece. And there we go. If it frays a little bit, all you need to do is recut your angles, which you usually need to do anyhow to trim up the bow. And now we can add this to the front of our 5.5 by 8.5 card base. We will take our bone folder, score along the lines, or rather burnish. Oh, you know why that happened? Because I didn't do the check mark. And I didn't do it a second time. Sometimes the fibers get broken down a little bit more when you've done that embossing, and so I think that's part of where it's a little more susceptible to tearing. We will add this to the front of the card. I am not going to add any fallen leaves down here on this card, essentially because I don't really have anything that's going to work quite like those sequins did on that other card. So this one will pretty much stay like that. And then we will do the other card. We're going to go like this. Use our bone folder. This ribbon that I used, it is available as part of the Regal Winter suite that's in that mini catalog, and it's the Blackberry and Bliss Gold ribbon. So that's where that came from. I do want to make sure my embossing is showing through. I'll put that piece here. And then I'm going to just pop that up on dimensionals just to give a little more detail to this card. and we'll just kind of pop that right there. So there you go. There they are in kind of the purple tones using the Blackberry Bliss. And here it is in orange tones using Pumpkin Pie as my primary color. This is Cajun Craze. This actually had crushed curry, pumpkin pie, and real red for the colors. So it does change things up just a little bit. We'll kind of go like that, and you can see how the different cards will look. Trying to keep them all on camera here, sorry. And then I told you that this also has masks to do pine trees. So I thought I'd get really fancy and use the white embossing paste on this card. So this is an example of what not to do. Not only did I get fancy with the paste, but I thought I'd add a third tree in here all at the same time. So a couple lessons that I learned is, one, this ink needs to dry completely before I use embossing powder, because it just picked up, or not embossing powder, but the embossing paste, because it just picked up all that green and you kind of lose the significance of the white snow on there. The other thing that I would recommend is go ahead and stamp this middle tree, but hold off embossing it until these two have completely dried with the embossing powder. You could also start with this one, let that embossing paste dry, and then move on to these two trees. The way the mask is set up is these two trees fit in that mask perfectly. So you're doing two trees at once. I'll show you what I mean with that. It goes like this. And so you see that you're getting these two trees done at the same time. And so do those and then move to that middle one. But make sure you wipe off what's on the back as well so that you don't get embossing paste on the rest of your cardstock like I did. The other thing to remember with that embossing paste is it dries, and it dries really hard. So if you use it on these things, you have to wash it off right away so that you don't get a layer built up on your embossing masks. That is a future video that I will show you. But for right now, I am set to sign off. I hope this has inspired you to give this a try, and we will see you all next week. Thank you.